This is the story of what happened when I was awarded the military medal. On the 7th of February in 1945, my division launched an attack from Groesbeck in the Netherlands to stop the Germans retreating down the road from Mook to Gennep. It was decided that a reconnaissance party had to be left into the surrounding countryside to see the strength to find positions for our 4 machine guns. It was decided that they wouldn't pick 9 men from the same platoon in case they all became casualties, and that put that platoon out of action. So they picked 3 from each platoon, volunteers. My friend Sergeant Frank Dolan immediately volunteered, and he said to me, "You'll come with me, won't you, Jeff?" And before I could say anything, he answered for me, "Yes, he'll come." So that's how I came to be involved. Well, off we went, and the area we had to reconnoitre was more heavily defended by the enemy than was first thought. So we came under quite heavy fire, and we had 2 machine guns with us, 2 Vickers machine guns, and we started advancing in bounds of 50 yards. One gun would fire while the other crew went forward 50 yards. Then that gun would stop and cover the other crew, and so far, until we realised that, as I say, the enemy was in greater strength and we wouldn't succeed in what we were doing. So our officer told us to mount on the carriers, which had a special mounting for the Vickers, and fire from them, which left us totally exposed above the bracken. It took me about 1 minute to realise this was ridiculous. So we came off and took our guns on the ground again. However, we had to advance, and I'd managed to capture a German strong point on the way up, and I was using a German Smiser, a machine pistol which had a distinctive firing sound. And I think the only reason I got close to this German strong point was that the Germans defending could hear the particular noise of this Smiser, and they thought there were some of their own men still out there, and they probably held their fire. And of course, once I got up to the strong point, they've only got slits, and the defenders are at a disadvantage. So I was able to commence firing when, at this stage, my friend Frank Dolan was shot through the eye and out the back of the neck with a sniper. And it's impossible to fire a Vickers gun on your own. So after ascertaining that he was dead, I decided to pick the machine gun up and carry it back back to our own lines, which I managed to do. And that was that day, and the next day we were advancing, and we took up another position on the edge of the Reichwald forest, and when it got light, in front of us was a farmhouse with a Red Cross flag flying over it. And at that particular time, a column of wounded German soldiers came out under the protection of the Red Cross, and my corporal told me, and I told him not to fire. We don't shoot at wounded German soldiers under the protection of the Red Cross. So they made their way back to their own lines safely, the Germans. And later on, our officer came back from fetching some other officers up to the front line to see what was happening. And this officer of ours was the most obnoxious man you could wish to meet. And at that particular moment, another small crowd of wounded Germans came out, this farmhouse, under the protection of the Red Cross. And my officer demanded to know why I wasn't shooting, opening fire with a machine gun on them. I said, we don't fire at wounded Germans. And he ordered my corporal to open fire, and I immediately ordered my corporal not to. And I said to you, you always obey the last order, and that's not to fire, and now get lost. So this officer couldn't give him a further order. So by now this officer jumped behind a machine gun, attempted to fire it, which is impossible for a single person to fire more than a couple of rounds without the gun jamming, which he did do so. And opposite us were the Germans, or Fallschirmjägers, paratroopers, and they were trying to kill us, but they obeyed the rules. And I think they disgusted by this behaviour, and shortly afterwards a patrol of about 30 Germans came out. I think they were trying to exactly find our position, so I ordered our guns not to fire, and the infantry were able to take care of them. They went back to their own lines, and about an hour afterwards we were attacked by 300 paratroopers and 3 Tiger tanks after a terrific German bombardment. During this bombardment, I was in the same office as these 3 officers that had come up, and our own officer to my right. 3 officers all got killed, and my officer was completely buried when the trench collapsed, and I was buried up to my waist, but I managed to keep the airways of this officer cleared so that he could breathe, and until we were dug out by the rest of my men. And when he got out, he said to me, the officer said to me, "You saved my life." So I said, "Well, don't tell anyone without thinking." And he turned to his nasty self. "What do you mean?" he said. So I said, "Oh, well," I passed it off. Anyway, I directly blame him for opening fire and drawing the attention and causing the death of these 3 officers in my trench and some of our others. So, some time later, someone said to me, "The Colonel wants to see you." And I thought, what have I done now? What have I done wrong? And so I went to see him, and he looked at me and he had a smile on his face, and that's when he told me I'd been awarded the military medal. So that's it.
What was that like for you to hear?
Hear it? Well, I was pleased, of course, but I thought, why me? There were plenty of others who did things who deserved the military medal beside me. I was only doing my job. If I didn't want to do my job, I shouldn't have been a sergeant.
You'd mentioned that there were 3 officers that were killed in the trench.
Yes?
What killed them?
What?
What killed those officers?
What?
What killed those officers?
Well, a shell burst on the trench. A shell or a mortar, I'm not sure which. Big explosion. Trench caved in. And when we managed to get to them, after they dug me out, because they were covered in debris where the trench had collapsed, and all 3 were dead.
Did you know any of them well?
No, because one was from the engineers who'd come up to see about lifting the mines. The other was what they call a FOO, a forward observation officer, to spot for the artillery. And a third was the leader of a troop of tanks that were waiting just behind us to come up to if there was a chance of them getting through. So I didn't know any of them.
You mentioned that after Sergeant Dolan was killed, you picked up the gun.
Yeah.
The Vickers gun. How heavy is that, sir?
Well, together with the tripod, it's over, well, a hundredweight is 112 pounds in English, and it was over 100 weight, so it was over 112 pounds. But when you're frightened, you're surprised what you can do. And I was frightened.
And so, how close was Sergeant Dolan to you when he was killed?
I would say 6 inches. It was shoulder to shoulder. 6 inches from my shoulder. Like, stay just about there. We were so this sniper could have killed either of us. Why he chose to kill Frank and not me, I will never know.
So Sergeant Dolan was right next to you when he was killed? He was right next to you?
Yes, right at my side.
Were you guys talking, or, I mean, how did you notice that, he had been killed?
Well, I heard this smack, and he just gave a great big sigh and fell forward. And that was it.
And you mentioned that he was your best friend.
Yeah, I've been friends with him since the 1st of September 1939.
What kind of person was he?
Character? Did you say?
What kind of person was he? Yes, sir.
Oh, one of the best. They don't come better than that. We always shared everything. Our blanket, if we only had one blanket to sleep in, or if we had any money, we shared that. If one had none and one had a little bit in his pocket, then we would share.
And how old was he when he was killed?
27. He was a year older than me.
Did you visit his family after the war?
I didn't know his family. No, I didn't. I don't really know, I can't remember where he came from. Somewhere in London, but I don't really know. all these years ago.
What did he look like?
What did he look like? Well, he was a bit bigger than me, slightly bigger build. But he had a bit fairer hair, not blonde, but like light brown. And I think he was a gentleman, I would call him, in his manners. Always very polite.